you're the most stubborn person on earth, or there's another reason. What is it?
I'm not stubborn. I have faith. I heard earlier today that faith is not an investment strategy. But I'm bullish. I believe in our companies here in the U.S. I also think, too, I've been doing this for a long time, and one of my pet peeves were stock would go down, and then the analysts would drop the target. Market's gone down. I'm not going to drop my target. We're going to see how this thing settles out. And I think tomorrow is a very important day. And remember, this market...
Because the CPI?
Yeah, because of CPI. But this market has been so binary for the last 3 years. Good news, bad news, COVID, no COVID, stimulus, no stimulus. And the Fed has clearly taken away money for the punch bowl. We know that, right? And we've had a re-rating of the growth stocks that kept this country, the society alive. We know that. Now, what are we going to pay for these going forward? That's going to be a big question, right? I think our earnings number on the S&P 500 at 245, I think it's spot on. Now, we have to, how much are you going to pay for that? And now we're going into the year where we made the mistake, and I'm not ashamed of saying we make mistakes, is that we were using the transitory term. I thought that inflation would go off a lot faster, up like an elevator, down like an elevator. Mm-hmm. It's much stickier than I thought, and I think tomorrow we are seeing signs of, on a month-over-month basis, that inflation's peaking. We get that. But are we going to see some sort of a surprise number?
Right.
And that could really get things going.
What makes you think that your $245 earnings number is dead on, right on the money, as you suggest, so unbelievably confidently? I mean, the whole knock is that earnings expectations, while still high, are delusional and that they need to come down. Why do you say they don't? There's this notion that analysts are always wrong and they're always late. But I think what people have missed, and this has been going on for 20 years, that the standard deviation of earnings in the United States in terms of the S&P 500, but especially tech, has become very tight. The number is actually pretty good, and the cash number is pretty good. So if you think about where free cash flow yields are, where balance sheets are, where debt to equity is, all of that kind of comes into how you run your company. And the operating performance of the majority of sectors in the S&P 500 continues to improve. We feel good about the earnings number. Do you think we're near a bottom?
Well, judging by a number of sentiment issues that are personal, meaning the Brian Belski stomach index over the last 10 days, I mean, it's never been worse. So in the amount of negative calls that I'm getting, and I haven't got any death threats yet, not like 2008. But I will tell you this, that investors are nervous. They are positioned for more downside. And of the people that we talked to since 5 o'clock this morning, no one is positioned for an upside surprise. No one.
Well, because there's one thing to say that inflation has peaked. It's another to suggest that it's actually coming down, right? So, yes, okay, are we going to get 8.1 read on the CPI relative to 8.5 or what it was? Sure, it's going to feel better, but inflation's still high.
Right.
And the Fed is going to fight it at all costs. Are you suggesting in any way that the Fed is not going to be as hawkish as the market now suggests? Because the market, in some respects, is ahead of the Fed. In terms of what the ballpark looks like moving forward.
The stock market, absolutely, in the bond market to some degree, but the Fed has to raise rates. They absolutely positively have to raise rates. And I think there's not enough talk about the bond market, Scott, in terms of a 40-year bull market in bonds. If you think about what happened since the late 80s, for the whole decade of the 90s and 2000s, average inflation was 2.6%. 2.6%. And the average forecast at the end of 2021 for 2022 was 3% inflation. Everyone got it wrong. So does everybody have it wrong this time around that we're too high? That's what I kind of worry about. Needless to say, we're going to have to work off this inflation for a while, and the Fed's going to do its job and be probably more aggressive than everybody thinks.